Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA and elevates the voices of adoptees who are woefully misrepresented in the public narrative about adoption. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, a domestic infant adoptee and NPE, as well as a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
I'm Lily. I'm her daughter, and I'm here to have a nice time.
Oh, wow, that was good. Yeah, that's great.
Couldn't think of anything better. You know what I was gonna say? It's Lesbian Visibility Week. Can you see me? What do you think about that?
Whatever works.
Okay.
You be you.
I am.
Hey everybody, Renee's not here this week, but pinch hitting for Renee is Lily Zella Jackson.
What word did you use?
Pinch hitting.
Pinch hitting?
Okay, that is a baseball reference.
Couldn't tell you that one.
Okay, well, that's because I'm an adult. And
And
so
I'm
are
not.
you.
I am a ripe 26 now.
Yeah, you are. You're elderly.
Yeah.
You're also really loud. Hold on. Let me turn you down a little. Okay.
Classic me.
Hey, welcome to the podcast, Lil.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. I did this with you a while ago. I've
Yeah.
done it.
You've done it a few times. Yeah, you have. And you actually, though we do this on Zoom. And by the way, the sound quality is probably going to be bad on this, you guys, because my microphone is not working and I'm speaking into it stupidly because it's not actually recording. It's recording on the computer.
You feel like a prop.
I have to have something to talk into. I'll just move it out of the way.
Classic
right.
you.
Classic me. All right. Yeah. So Lily is helping me this week, and she actually is upstairs in her old room, and I'm down at my desk. I had to move her really far away because she doesn't have a headset, and we'd have a problem with that. Do you have anything to talk about, Lily? Would you like to tell me about anything that may or may not pertain to genetic genealogy?
Yeah, I know. I guess that's the hard one, huh? What do I have to talk about regarding genetic genealogy?
Or even vaguely misattributed parentage.
I'm like,
that stuff?
that was a joke. I'm trying to think of
Okay.
any sort of media that I've consumed recently that has to do with like parentage. I
saw something today.
What'd you see?
Jack Nicholson has a daughter that he doesn't acknowledge, but she's definitely his daughter.
Definitely, as like she looks like him, or like definitely as in, what do you mean?
Definitely as in there's like nobody denies it.
Oh,
but he doesn't have a relationship with her.
Oh, interesting.
Sad.
Yeah, that is sad.
It's
do you think that there is an like extra tier, TIER, obviously, of not difficulty, but like, do you think finding your parentage and finding out that the person is a celebrity or something, do you think in your mind it is, I mean, obviously we would assume that they would go to that person directly privately, but do you think that it would be harder to get hold of a person who is famous, and thus sometimes people, like, what do you think? Do you think that there is nuance there as far as like, has there ever been any stories of someone stepping up being like, this person's my parent and they aren't responding to me, and they like, do you think that there's a different
sure, there's different levels of that, and I think like Liv Tyler is a perfect example of that. They were both famous. Well, I guess she wasn't because she didn't use the name Tyler, but like she didn't find out until she's Steven Tyler's daughter, but she didn't know that miraculously enough until she was in her teens, and he stepped up at that point. Yeah. So there have been several situations like that, and I think that because I researched this one a little bit, and it looks like nobody denies it, but he's like, hey, I was about to do a Nicholson impression. It wasn't going to be good.
What would that even be? I don't know what that even be.
I'd like you to hold this piece of ham between your knees.
When does he say that? What piece of media does he say that in?
That's an actual quote. I mean,
No, I
it's like an
assumed
actual quote.
you'd made that
I
up.
think there was a movie called Five Easy Pieces. I may be crazy.
That's a movie. That's a
Yeah,
movie.
it was Jack Nicholson in it.
I don't know about that one.
Okay, so he's talking to a waitress
Mm-hmm.
and he's being sarcastic and she's like, hold this, hold that. You want me to hold this and hold that? And he said, I want you to take this and hold it between your knees. Okay. Something like that. I don't know.
Fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
Woo, fun with words.
Love that.
Yeah. So there's that, but there's also the situation where there is, oh, how am I going to put this? So there is a woman who has actually written a book and has for many years suggested that she is the daughter of a very, very famous person.
Mhm.
I actually have spoken to her a couple times,
Oh, wow.
having nothing to do with genetic genealogy, but in other professional-
avenues than genetic genealogy?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
That happens when you cut people's hair.
Oh
You
my
find
God.
out everything. Yeah, people will tell
Yeah.
you stuff. So yeah,
You're right.
this woman, and I'm not going to say who she says she's related to, but she is known to the family because they've sent her cease and desist. She's also been married to another famous person. And that is true. That much is true. And she's written a book about it. But anyway,
Oh.
I told her, because she's been all over the place with it, and she doesn't know how genealogy works or DNA works. And so
Sure.
I told her, I can prove once and for all if this
sure.
person is your father.
Mhm.
And she was like, oh, really? And then she thought about it for a second. She's like, okay, I'll get back to you on that. And she never has.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I think yeah, that is interesting to me. Like the theoretical desire versus the actual desire. I was like, the
Well,
desire thing is obviously we've talked a lot about this, about like those who seek knowing the parentage and those who don't. And if there is a, I don't know, what word am I about to use? Not that there is an obligation to do so, but there should be obviously as your entire thing is that there should be room to do so and it should be accepted with open arms,
yes.
etc.
Yes.
And it's just interesting to me because I think as someone who isn't an adoptee, I theoretically in that situation would want to know, even at a basic level of, medical history and things like that, as I think is like, I'm sure a common threshold, I think. But I think,
at the very least, that is important. Yeah.
But like my roommate is adopted, and
She is? Oh, he.
I have two roommates, one's a boy, one's a girl.
You've never told me that.
Oh, have I not?
Oh, interesting. Tell me about it.
He's adopted, and both him and his sister are adopted, both from Russia.
Oh,
and so that I think is, I assume, like many countries is more difficult to get access or to find the parentage.
well, absolutely. And they usually come from orphanages where they were treated horribly, and there was
Yeah,
usually.
I don't think he doesn't know. He is one of those people that has truly no desire at all.
Right now,
And
but he's young.
no, absolutely, that could definitely change, because I've definitely like kind of pinged him about it, obviously, because I have more information, I'd say, than the average on this kind of stuff, because of you. And it seems to me he is in the camp, which is actually I don't know, I'm curious about it. And I guess it then poses me to a second follow-up question, but I'll stay on track. He's like, well, my parents are my parents. He's like, it's that sort of thing, which is like a common narrative.
Is a given. Yes.
It is a given. I think it's often a fear-based mindset. It's giving to me, knowing what hey, God love him, he's not going to listen to this. He I think is operating under a fear-based mindset, and I think that is often the case.
It's what we call the fog.
Sure. Yes. And then yeah, I don't know, my curiosity. Well, no, we've talked about this. We've discussed at length various aspects of it. And I guess I'm curious if what your current take on it is, because I assume over time your takes on things have evolved or adapted.
Sure, as everything does. Yeah.
So the word, and it's a hard word to me, but the word obligation,
Mhm.
right? So
Interesting. You've touched on two things already that make up the acronym of FOG.
yeah, I think that is interesting. I'd be curious to see. He's not as many are, I think, not tapped into there whatsoever. Which,
Absolutely, and may never. And here's
yeah,
the thing, we say that, well, they're in the fog, which
Mm-hmm.
in no way do I want to drag him out of the fog,
right.
because the
Yeah,
fog is a safe place for a lot of people, but
sure.
it's also a place that does not help the cause of those of us who are out of the fog, because
Of course.
they're the ones that are referenced by the general community that says, oh, I have a roommate that was adopted, he's fine.
Sure.
You know what I
I
mean?
think I think as I'm such like a of the party of, in this day and age with like not this, but just everything in the world, there's like we have to make room for nuance
Mhm.
because nothing exists in black and white, and every
Mhm.
individual is so unique. And also every individual is so unique, and also there's always a collectivism of various sects of people, for say example, for example, adoptees, as in like you find yourself in the sect of people that have come out of the fog.
Mhm.
And I think it is interesting to me the more you talk about it, and then also I think it shows to me the expanse of understanding. I think the nuance of what you talk about is sometimes difficult to me as someone who isn't adopted, obviously, because it is so nuanced and so specific to you, and also specific to the community that you're a part of, and also has to come with a huge amount of nuance, and also something that we haven't talked about on the podcast, but I think if we were to talk about, we should like do a full episode about, is like, I'm a lesbian. My experience with having children is going to be different. And that comes with so many different facets and different places and things like that. And I think there has to be room for nuance, because what you're not going to sit there and be like, well, you can't have children because it's a lot, like, there's so many directions because of modern medicine that I could take with having children. And one of those is adoption. And one of them is surrogacy, or one of them is don't, like, there's so many spaces that I think still to this day exist to me as sort of not a confusion, because I think obviously my inherent existence is not in, or my inherent desire to have children is not in direct opposition to your truth, because that's not how things work.
Right.
But obviously I think if anything, I'm going to be very well educated no matter what I do. That's for certain. Yeah, I don't know. We've talked about it a bit, but it's a very interesting territory, I think, especially considering, like, if I had my druthers in a dream future where I have children and I have all the money in the world, I would love to be doing cutting edge technology where I am using maybe my wife's egg, and I'm carrying it because we're both raising this, like, there's so like, or I don't know, just something that
Well,
feel
that's something that you could do.
it is, and it's
Yes.
incredibly expensive.
Oh my gosh.
The most
Yes.
expensive possible version. And I
Right.
think that often is a factor in situations like this, is cost prohibitiveness, because what is cheaper than these egg fertilization and things like that is adoption. And that, of course, shouldn't be the reason.
Not necessarily, though, actually.
You
I
don't
mean,
think so?
adoption is a multi-billion-dollar industry in this country.
Yes, of course. No, absolutely.
Like
And I
newborn adoption.
Yes, and the way that I would want to go about it in terms of open adoption and things like that, obviously would probably come with a cost as well. So I don't know I don't have the price breakdowns in front of me, but I would be curious to see what that looks like or aligns.
See, it's interesting to me that you said like price breakdowns and cost prohibitive and stuff like that, because that is talking about acquiring a human for money, which is human trafficking.
I push back on that a little bit, I think.
All right. But if the
I hear
UN
you.
believes that adoption is human trafficking. The UN believes that the exchange of money for the procurement of humans is human trafficking.
I hear you. No,
Okay.
I'm sure the technical of that is true,
Mhm.
but as someone who wants to be a mother, speaking in those terms, I think it isn't exactly fair to be like, well, the thing you're talking about, the way that you want to have a child is human trafficking. Because, I'm just trying to figure out the most apt, correct, positive method. And so,
Right. Yes,
just
but keep in mind that that is, and this is not an attack on you.
Sure.
I support you becoming a mother. I want to be a grandmother.
Mm.
Um, but anytime you put your wants and desires
Mhm.
first, that is not child-centered.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just
So
putting
then
that
my
out there.
question for you is what does someone like me do?
Um, we talk about that when we're ready for that to happen. I mean, I can't tell
I'd
you
like
what
you
to
to
do.
think about that because
I've thought about it.
yeah, and so have I. And I think those facts are entirely true, and the things that you're saying, the data and the UN definition and stuff, are all entirely valid and
Mhm,
important.
mhm.
And also there is nuance. There
Yep,
always has to be nuance
always.
because the, what you're not going to let lesbians have children, obviously not. Like that's not what
Mhm,
you're implying. But
right,
there has to be a way to talk about this that is not assigning blame on people who want to be parents that
right.
you to,
Yes.
do things the
Okay.
right way, blah, blah,
So
blah.
in it, for me, the easiest answer, if
Yeah.
you want to get into it, and this actually, we talked about it on uh, last week's episode,
Mhm.
that can go south. You have to have all your ducks in a row.
Sure.
But for me, the best way for the child,
Mhm.
um, and probably least expensive, would be
Mhm.
just to go with donor sperm of someone that you know and someone that you have in your life.
Yeah.
That would be that child's father. Doesn't necessarily live with you,
Mhm.
but is that child's father. That child knows you and your wife are that child's mothers,
Mhm.
and they have a father, and he lives here, and he is in their life.
Mhm. I push back on that a little bit, I think,
Why?
because that to me, as someone who will be with a wife and will
Mhm,
be two parents,
mhm,
these are the two parents that are, for all intents and purposes, I don't really align with this, are mother and father, or these two parent roles that often are in that there's often two parental figures.
yes.
The To me, and I don't think you mean it in this way, obviously, which is why there's so much that needs to be discussed here, but like that to me implies that like a child does not have a well-rounded upbringing or raising if there is not a man present in the space.
No, that's not what I'm
And I
saying.
get what you're saying. I
Mhm.
assume, at least from what I'm getting, what you mean is that these two people biologically made this person. I understand that. Like
And
these are biological roots.
right. And that child sees themselves in both of those parents. That child has a conduit to both sides of their genetics, both sides of what made them,
Mhm.
because their half of their DNA is that man's DNA and his history.
Mhm.
And of course, you know how important that is to me.
Sure.
And the case I was talking about last week was a case in which that actually happened. A lesbian couple brought in their good friend to donate some sperm. And then when the kid turned 5, he completely went crazy uh, and sued them for custody.
That's whack. See, that to me is super
Yes,
whack.
no, he wanted, and the thing is, he had been in that child's life. She
Mhm.
knew who he was.
Yeah.
He'd been in her life, but he wanted to make it legal for some reason. I don't know if that's some weird toxic masculinity thing that he felt like he needed to. I don't know.
Yeah, that
But
reads to me as homophobia too, honestly. That reads
but
to me
he
as
was good friends with them. I mean, he
matter.
officiated their wedding.
You can still be homophobic without being like, I hate gay people.
Yeah, I
Like
guess.
that is a huge facet of homophobia, is that it is especially combined with toxic masculinity or misogyny, is
Hmm.
that often it is implicit. And
Right.
so obviously I didn't hear the full story,
Yep.
but that to me reads as like a man wanting to assert his power over two people that are happily playing the parental role, happily
Right.
and and
Yes.
fulfillingly
Yes.
fulfilling the role of parent, and saying, oh no, because I have blood relation to this person, I have just as much power over this child or
Right.
control over the
No,
child,
but
which is not the case to me, or
sorry.
is not.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. And that's why you have to have, they did not do a contract, which is the first mistake.
Sure, sure, sure.
Yes. But no, my whole thing is not that there needs to be a man in the picture. It
Mhm.
needs, if two women could conceive a child without a man, and that child had both of those women's DNA,
Sure,
that end.
sure.
For me, it's whoever makes this baby has a right to be identified as this person's child, because that's
Absolutely.
child-centered. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I agree
Yeah.
with that. And I think in my dream world, or not dream world, but in a world in which I use a donor, I would know the donor and the child would meet the donor and
Yeah.
would be around. But I think there is a line to me between in the picture and like, I mean, you're not saying co-parenting, but it's like is can be visited, can hang out with, can
Yeah.
spend time with, can meet and discuss with, but doesn't hold the same weight, I think, to me as the two parents who are raising them, because that to me connotes a sort of bioessentialism of this dude has more
Yeah.
stock
I get
because
it.
of
I
because
get
I
it.
think
But like I said, at some point it needs to be the child's decision when they are old enough to figure that out.
absolutely,
You
sure.
know?
Yes, I agree
But
with
does that
that.
make sense? Yeah.
Yes, of
Okay.
course. I think that I think we are in a very interesting dynamic here as an adoptee and a lesbian child, and that there is a lot of room for stickiness that I think has to be discussed with grace in honoring both situations.
Mhm.
If I were to adopt a child, obviously adoption, as you said, is not child-centered. And by definition, would you say that adoption is not child-centered?
Adoption is anything where a child's name is changed and
Mhm.
their history kept from them is not child-centered.
So the name thing is interesting to me because,
We've talked about this a
yeah,
lot.
I'm sure. Because that to me connotes that the biological parent, I guess, who we assume would name the child,
Mhm.
um, takes more stock, but has the ultimate say, like initially. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yes.
think it's so interesting that name is the threshold. I think the experience makes sense to me. The name being one of the thresholds is interesting to me because names are to me as a queer person too, like
Mhm.
names are so malleable and fluid, and so that being sort of part of the definition to me is not something
Right. So being an adoptee, your life is wrought with identity issues.
sure,
Who am
absolutely.
I? And when I found out that my name was not Julie Lisa Dixon, it was
Yeah.
Katrina Ellen Price Fisher,
Uh-huh.
that blew my mind.
Sure.
And then when I saw it on my original birth certificate,
Sure.
that really blew my mind, because my parents told me they didn't know what my name was, or they didn't think I had a name, but they
Yeah.
had seen my original birth certificate. My name was on my adoption papers.
Sure.
So that was them, and I know they had their own reasons for doing it. It was another time, but that denotes that they didn't honor my whole story,
Sure.
and I didn't matter before they came into it.
Mhm.
And that's
That makes sense.
hard to wrap my head around. And the name changing thing is, it just, I feel bad changing animals' names. Imagine, I mean, we've talked about this before. It's like people, when it comes to adoption, um, society is more humane with animals than it is with humans, because they want to rip a child away from a mother as soon as it's born. No dog breeder or anyone who is having puppies will allow a dog or a cat away from their mother, if at all possible, for at least 6 weeks because it is better for that baby.
When you say better for that baby, in that scenario in which the child is chosen to be ripped from the mother, that is your experience. That's
Most
so,
people's experience.
no, so that's my question. The most people's experience, to me, I'm curious about, because there obviously are so many outlier varying situations in which
Yep.
adoption ends up happening, whether it's I don't know, the child's parents passing or some
I mean, it's very rare. The most common infant adoption are when babies are procured and the mothers are in a crisis and they are coerced into thinking that it is better to give their child to somebody else who would be a better parent.
Who in that scenario is doing the coercion?
The adoption agencies.
I knew you, okay, yeah, okay, sure.
The adoption agencies often, I don't believe in pre-birth matching either, because I don't want that mother to know that be able to put a face on those people that are going to adopt those children, because she's going to feel differently after she has that child. And but she will know them, and she will be riddled with guilt if she even thinks about changing her mind and keeping her own child. Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I understand that. I understand
Mhm,
that. My
mhm.
then follow-up question is, in that scenario, that makes sense to me. And so are you implicitly against surrogacy?
No,
Okay.
not implicitly.
Okay.
Um, but so here's the thing about surrogacy to think about. Are you talking about a surrogate using her own egg, or your
Um,
egg being implanted in the surrogate?
I'm not sure what I mean. So
Okay.
maybe in either, I have very close friends that you know that use a surrogate.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious. And I'm
Um,
pretty sure in that situation, it was gotta be have been the mother's egg.
I think I think it is different if it is the biological mother's egg, the mother's who raises the child's egg.
I think it's more common. Is that not? Is that
Yes,
more? Yeah.
yes, it
So I guess
is. It
it's
is
a
because then it becomes like a half adoption almost. If
well, because then I think it feels, I assume it would feel for the mother who is working with the surrogate you would feel more connected to the child because your DNA, not more connected,
Mhm.
but that is often chosen, I assume, because
True, but
then you're
let me say this. Whenever you are carrying a child in your womb, even
it
if
is,
you don't carry that child to term,
yes,
there is you have that child's DNA within your body for the rest of your life.
absolutely,
There
yes,
are
I believe that.
the DNA of that child is imprinted in your body for the rest of your life. There is
Mhm.
still that connection. There's also the if we're talking about the primal wound, once again, when that child is born, they want that person they have been hearing, smelling, moving with, listening to. I'm saying the same words over and over again. For the last 9 months, a child expects the one thing a newborn expects is to be greeted by the one person that they know when they're born. And if they are not, and if that oxytocin does not get released, that baby goes into fight or flight and their brain chemistry is changed.
That makes sense to me.
That's a simple fact. So if there's a surrogacy, even if it is that, so that baby is going to know whoever it was with for the last 9 months, even
Mhm.
though it is biologically that other woman's child. So I feel like real care needs to be taken in the handover.
Yeah,
Does
absolutely.
that make sense? Like
Yeah, I think
with
in my
adoptions, a lot of the time, and I hate that they do this in adoptions. I hate it when couples go to the hospital. I hate it when they're in the room when the baby is born, and it goes right to their
really?
arms. Yes, I hate it.
Well, I was actually, I would cut that off mid-sentence, because in my eyes, if I were to have that happen, I would like to be present, but I wouldn't want to be the first person to hold the child. I would want the person who carried the child to be the first person so that
Mhm.
that can happen. And then there is nuance. That's the key word of the day. That
Mhm.
there is time for that to happen, and then a gentler handoff happens. But I would want to be present if my child was being born, in the same way that it would be like family, or
If
if you
if you were adopting,
if I were, I think I was talking about surrogacy.
okay. Sir,
But
like I said,
or
surrogacy is a little different. If it's I would hope that if you went the surrogacy route, I don't think you should go the surrogacy route. I'm just saying, because why can't you carry a child
well,
or
there's two
your
ways
whoever your
possible.
partner is?
I've dated people who, I want to carry a child, I do,
Hmm.
but I also want more than one child.
Yep.
So in a universe in which, and I think in my ideal universe, um, I carry a child and my wife carries a child.
Sure. Sure.
If
It's a
my
perfect scenario.
if my wife does not want to carry a
Hmm.
child,
Don't carry
then
both.
then no, I actually
Oh,
I
you
think
only been pregnant once?
I don't know yet, but I
Okay.
think there is, and I use this word lightly, not in a joking way, not in a
Hmm.
reality way. There is a novelty to the fact that, oh, we can both carry, so that's great that I don't have to carry two children. So I
Hmm.
think like, and I do think, and this is a very unfleshed out opinion that I would like to think more on, but I do think there is there is something interesting to me from a, how do I word this? Um, I also know that in my raising of children, I would like to, the whole it takes a village of it all. I think like I do like the idea of co-parenting with other people who have children, sort of a village style, like,
Hmm.
I do like, do you know what I'm getting at here? And I think that there is a non-traditional, I'm going to have a non-traditional marriage and parenthood
Hmm.
inherently.
Hmm.
And I think that because of that, the way that me and my future wife, will,
Whoever she may be,
whomever
or
she may
they.
be, or they may be out there, that the way that we have children is going to be non-traditional too. And I
Hmm.
think that there is a beauty to that, in that there is
Hmm.
non-traditional and there's non-traditional. And
I
so
would agree.
I do think that that is kind of why, even if I carry one child, I feel absolutely no problem, and almost positively, about the prospect that one of the children that I have is not only not carried by me, but it maybe is not, like, that there is a non-traditional way of having a child.
One last thing for me, growing up with one adopted sibling that hated me, my greatest joy in life is the fact that you and your brother are full siblings and
Mhm,
that you love each other and
mhm.
you are so obviously full siblings. That
I
makes
think
me so happy.
absolutely. Hey, I love it too. Love being close to them. I think, to me, the one that I think, not to speak for you, but I
Mm.
think, emotionally, to me, I think the one, to me, and maybe to you as well, the one out of all of those that matters the most to me is that we get along. Like,
Yes.
obviously,
Oh, me too. Me
it
too.
is so, and I know you'd say that.
Yeah,
It is so fun to me that we look so much alike and la la la.
that
But I
is
think,
fun.
yeah, it's super fun. But isn't always the case. And I think and I don't know if this is what you are working towards, but I do push back on the concept that, like, siblings who aren't related, or siblings that are half siblings, are not as siblingy. Like, I think I
Yeah.
push back
No, no.
on,
Yeah. You can push back
once
on
again,
that. I'm just
I
going on my experience and which was not
absolutely,
good. So,
of
but
course.
I know that there are many that it is good for, and it's
And
not
I
the source of their trauma.
exactly.
You
And I
know.
think that's why I do think it is interesting And it has always been interesting talking to you about these things because you are specifically incredibly trauma informed. And I think you specifically are not only incredibly trauma informed from a technical stance where you know why things are the way they are and things like that, but you experienced this great trauma. And I think this is why you are such a champion of these things, because you know it and you felt it. And so I think that is why it is interesting to talk to you about these things, especially as someone who wants to have children, that like, yeah, I have not been traumatized in the way that you have by those things. And so, and you obviously, as my mother, wanting to give her takes as both my mother and someone who is informed by those things, I think I want it to be, I seek it being, and I think that you, as you have continued to work through your traumas and they are now a part of you. And I think, my hope for you, I'm pivoting a little bit. My hope for you as your child is that these traumas are a part of you. Not that's my hope, but that
Great.
the full phrase, hold on, hear me out. That the trauma is a part of you, but it doesn't wear you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think so that if and when clock's ticking, I have children, the way that I go about this with your guidance is trauma informed, not trauma guided.
Yes.
And I think, yeah.
And that's the best I can ask. I want for you to do what you want to do. I just want you to be informed.
Of course.
Yes.
And I am nothing if not.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I guess we're not going to have two segments and we're not talking about anything that I was going to talk about because we just went off.
Sorry, I have a lot to add.
No, it was great. It was great. I love that. Let's take a break. If you're enjoying Cutoff Genes, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Okay, we're back. It is part 2 of Storytime with Jim Serrano. When we left off with Jim, he was with a coworker who believed he was his biological father just by some hints. It's crazy. And of course, I left it hanging there because that is my way. Yes. Okay, so here is the rest of Jim's story. Enjoy.
To get to know them a little bit more. So then me and Carlos decided to go and do blood tests.
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
Yeah, we went to go do the blood test.
Okay.
And then we were already planning Christmases and stuff like that. And usually the blood test usually comes back in like 6-7 weeks, right? And at least this one did. And finally, here comes the letter about the results of the blood test. And it wasn't my father.
He wasn't.
He wasn't my father. So that was one of the worst phone calls I had to make because
that would have been a crazy coincidence.
Yeah, he cried on the phone because
you'd already bonded.
Son. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was upset. I don't even remember that going to work that day. A guy I used to commute with, he says, "You were a zombie. You were like, why are you coming to work? You were just slumped in the side of the cab. You were just like, you weren't there."
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. So then after Tina says, "Don't give up. Don't give up. We'll keep on trying." It's okay.
Yeah, that would have been way too easy.
Yeah. So one day, probably about 4 months after that, my wife was talking to our neighbor from across the street. And they were talking about their husbands, of course.
As you do.
So it was Connie and Dominic lived across the street. So all of a sudden, Connie told Tina that Dominic was adopted. I goes, "He is?" It goes, "Jim's adopted." Goes, "He is?" Goes, so Tina told a little bit about my story. She goes, "Dominic went searching for his parents and they both were deceased. Tell Jim to go talk to Dominic." Okay, so I went and I knew Dominic. I played softball with him. I played on his softball team when I moved to that town where I lived. And we were friends already. And I go, "Dude, I didn't know you were adopted." I go, "I didn't know you were adopted." So he was in this programs called Adoptees Discovery Network. He told me that he found his parents, but they were both deceased.
Mm-hmm.
But he told me there was another meeting coming up, but it was in Santa Clara. That's where the county I was born in. So I went to this meeting. I took my paperwork in with me, and there was a gentleman. I always call him. He was an angel because
A search angel.
yeah, he had to been because he was like, shoot, 75 years old,
Mm.
and it was me and 6 other adoptees in this meeting. All I had was this piece of paper from the hospital wherever I was, and he goes, "All right." The meeting was for maybe 3 hours at the most,
Okay.
and he says, "All right, Jim, well, go home and I'll have your mother's maiden name." I go, "How are you gonna do that?" He goes, "I'll have your mother's maiden name. I'll get
Oh,
back to you."
he had access to the
Yeah,
California birth registry.
yeah, I
Okay.
guess so.
Yes, that has to be it.
So he contacted me probably about a month after that.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Jim, I got 3 names for you. The 3 names and addresses are one lady in L.A., one in I think it was Long Beach, and one in San Jose, California."
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I worked at for 30
Mm-hmm.
years. And so I said, okay. So I had the 3 names and the 3 addresses.
Okay.
So one day I was delivering concrete, okay, in San Jose. I got empty, and on the way back, I go, there's the address of the person that might be my mother in San Jose. You're not supposed to do this, but I said, what can I do? What can I do? So I pulled over. I was already empty. I was unloaded. I
Yeah.
was leaving the job site. So I pulled over and I went and knocked on the door. So this gentleman opened up the door and he kind of looked like me. And I go, "Hey, did you order any concrete?" And he goes, "No." Hey, he goes, "Oh, okay. Well, I'm lost. I'm just trying to find this address." He goes, "No, we didn't order no concrete." So, "Oh, okay, thanks." So I got in my truck and went home. Right? I mean, went back to the yard. So about 2 weeks after that, Neil Kiley calls me. I was at my cousin's house and just hanging out with him. And Neil calls me. He goes, "Jim, I found your mother." I goes, "You did? Which one is it?" He goes, "It's the one that lives in San Jose."
Mm-hmm.
I told him, "Neil, I got to tell you something." He goes, "What?" "I stopped at that house 3 weeks ago." He goes, "You did what?" "Here's her name. And here's the number." And she had Wanda, which was my sister. She was 5, and Bobby, which was 3. And
And he's the one who answered the door.
Bobby's the one that answered the door. And
Yeah.
then she had another son named Paul, which is the husband that she was married to before she passed away. She passed away 2 years ago.
Okay.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but so I made the phone call. So I asked, I guess, "Hey, is Bobby there?" She goes, "No, Bobby's not here." He goes, "How about Paul?" And she goes, "No." I go, "Who is this?" He goes, "Well, this is
Mm-hmm.
Jim Serrano." And he goes, "Okay, I don't recognize your name. I know all my son's friends because all of them were wrestlers in a wrestling team. They all hung out together, right?" I goes, "Well, I have something
Mm-hmm.
to ask you."
Mm-hmm.
She goes, "Yeah, go ahead." He goes, "Does January 22nd, 1962 mean anything to you?" So there was dead silence on the phone. So she goes, first thing she says is, "Who is this and why are you doing this to me?" I goes, "Well, this is who you might think it is, but I'm just asking you a question. I don't want to disrupt your life, but I have a 16-year-old daughter and I want to get my medical background. Uh, does those dates mean anything to you?" She goes, "Can we talk tomorrow? I can't talk right now." I go, "Sure, we could talk tomorrow." So I got off the phone. My in-laws had to pick me up to drive me home because I was such a wreck. So I went home and me and Tina, my wife, were in bed. We were talking about the situation. Ding, ding, ding. Here goes the phone ringing. And I picked it up. It was Noberta. Her name was Noberta Montoya Dominguez. That's her. Noberta
Noberta?
with an N.
Cool.
So
Okay.
I I answered the phone. It was her. She goes, Jim, can you meet me at the Valley Medical tomorrow at 10 a.m. instead of calling you? I go, sure. Where do I meet you at? He goes, my kids have appointments, so can I meet you in the parking lot? I go, okay. So I drove to the parking lot, and she told me what she kind of looked like and what car she was going to be driving. And so she came out of the car, and I kind of recognized her description. She had like three little kids with her, and she just looked at me. She hugged me and she cried in my arms, and I didn't have no feelings. She was a stranger to me. You know,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I was just like whatever. And she
Yeah.
goes, can
Mm.
you come with me to my kids' appointments? I go, oh sure, okay, I guess. So I
Yep.
went to the appointments, and then she came out of the appointments, and we talked a little bit more in the parking lot. And then she goes, Jim, there's one thing I got to go do right now. Because what? Because I got to go tell your husband that you exist and your siblings. Nobody knows about you.
You
Yes.
mean tell her husband?
Tell her husband
Yes. Okay.
that she gave up a baby for
Yes.
adoption. That was me. While she had already
Right.
had two
Yep.
kids of her own already. How do you think that made me feel too? So you kept two kids, but you gave me up because I was a one night stand. So after I figured out I was a one night stand.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm.
and she had to go tell my siblings that I existed and the whole family that I existed. So she went home. She told her husband, and probably a day later, she calls me up. She goes, come meet your brothers. My husband says everything that happened to you is not your fault. Why should we keep you away from your siblings? Come to the house and meet your brothers. So I go to the house. I met her and met my brothers, her husband, Paul. So my younger brother was named Paul. That was their son between them two. The little kids were around still. They were running all over the place, right? So I said, okay, whatever. And her grandkids, maybe my brother's kids, but they never introduced me to them, right? So I got home that night, and she calls me up because she wanted to talk some more. So then I asked her the question, hey, who are all those little kids? She goes, well, Jim, those are my foster kids. So her and her husband were foster parents for 25 years. They had 500 kids come through
Wow.
their home.
Wow.
Yeah. She got awards from the San Jose mayor and everything for
Yeah.
what she did, but
Wow.
she held that secret all these years that
Yeah.
existed.
Oh,
See, if
absolutely
I
she would
didn't
have.
go searching, she would have died with
Yeah.
that secret. So then I asked her, got to ask your question. Is Carlos Bryan my father? Because who's Carlos
Mm-hmm.
Bryan? Well, I told her the story about me thinking that was my dad. She goes, no, that's not your dad. Your dad is Raw Coca. Okay, Raw Coca. So that's would have been my last name, Coca. Okay. Where do I find him?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know, Jim. I haven't seen him in what, 38, 39 years, right? But I know where your uncle's furniture store is in downtown San Jose. It's been there forever.
Mm-hmm.
You could go talk to your uncle and find out where he's at. So one day, I was delivering concrete right across the street from his shop. I got empty. I walked in there, and the gentleman came up to me. He goes, hey, what can I do for you? He goes, I'm looking for Hank Coca. And he goes, he's not here, but I'm Hank Coca Jr. I'm his son. Do you know a Raw Coca? And he goes, yeah, that's my uncle. Okay. Well, and he goes, well, who are you? Here's my phone number. I'm his son. And he looked at me. He goes, his son? He goes, yeah. He goes, okay. I goes, so I'm just gonna just leave. I know it's kind of a shock, but here's the number, and if he wants to get a hold of me, tell him to give me a call. So about a week later, my biological mother threw a party for me to introduce me to the whole family. So on the way back, I said, okay, well, me and my wife were talking. Well, I guess my biological dad doesn't want to get a hold of me, right? So we got home to the place we used to live, and the answering machine, good old answering machines. I said, hi, this is Raul Coca. I think you might be my son. Let's meet at Original Joe's in San Jose. So I said, okay. So, and in the meantime, when all this was happening, I was even feeling more guilty about the search because my adopted mother
Right.
developed breast cancer.
Sure.
I was feeling guilty about that, even though they
Yeah.
they never asked me about my search. So I went and met my biological father. We took a blood test,
Okay.
and it was him. So he didn't know about
Mhm.
me. She didn't tell him, and I have no idea why she didn't tell him. But me and my wife figured, she had so much resentment towards him and the Coca family.
Yeah.
She didn't say anything to him. So she kept me away from my family for the 37 years just because of her
Sure.
anger issues that she had. And I knew her for 21 years before she passed away, and our relationship was a roller
Yeah.
coaster. It was a roller coaster. After we did the test, I met the family, and so my last name would have been Coca. My biological mother decided she wanted to throw me a
Mhm.
38th birthday party,
Mhm.
surprise one. And she closed a restaurant down in over here where I used to live, and
Wow.
we had about 200 people show up. But I found out 2 weeks before, and I was a nervous wreck because I knew my adopted family didn't
Had
want to
they been
come.
invited?
Yeah, they invited them,
Oh, okay. Oh,
but
oh
I knew
wow.
it was uncomfortable, especially my mom and dad.
Sure.
So it was supposed to be a surprise, but a buddy of mine blew it and told me about it, slipped.
Oh.
So, forgot to tell you. So, between my being molested as a child, I started drinking when I was 10 years old. And so that night, I walked into the party, and there was my adopted mom, my adopted dad, sitting on the same table with my biological mom and her husband. I looked at them, and I seen
Wow.
that anger in my dad's face, and I seen the hurt in my adopted mom's face. I go, my God, who's the stupid people that sat them on the same table? So that night, yeah.
Wow.
So that night, I just got drunker than drunk, just just to
Mm.
escape from reality. Because that's
Of
why I drank.
course.
That's why I drank, because I escaped from reality.
Of course. Of
Because I
course. You
abandonment,
you you
yeah,
need to numb it.
yeah, I numbed all the pain for the molestation, the abandonment
Yeah.
issues, everything that went through my life. Like I said, it was a roller coaster, back and forth. And I remember my dad when he left my birthday party. He looked at me. He was angry, and he goes, "We're going to talk about this tomorrow." I goes, "Oh shit, he's pissed off."
Wait, you were 38, right?
Hmm.
Oh, and he was still gonna like
Yep,
lecture you about
that's
something.
that's
Okay.
the way my father was.
Fascinating.
Old
Okay.
school, old school
Yeah.
Chicano attitude. So
Mhm.
the next day, we were at my home, and I was thinking about the whole situation, right? And all of a sudden, I felt like my heart was coming out of my chest, and I couldn't breathe, so I collapsed. So I yelled for Tina. I go, call
Mm.
an ambulance. There's something wrong with me.
Mhm.
Ambulance came and got me, took me to the hospital. They thought I had a massive heart attack. So I get there. I was in ICU for 3 days. I was in the bed, and here comes my uh, adopted parents, just looking at me in the bed. 5 minutes later, here comes my biological mother in the same room, looking at me, and they didn't say one word to each other, and they were just looking at me. And I go, "Oh Lord, if I had a gun right now, I would just blow myself away." They didn't
Oh,
understand what you were doing to
weird.
me. See, there's another situation. I know about October 30th is National Adoptee Remembrance Day. For See, I had those thoughts when I was growing up as a teenager, how I was gonna kill my abuser and how I was gonna kill myself.
Yeah.
So I lived that in my teenage
Mhm.
years. So
Mhm.
that moment in that hospital, I had those thoughts come back.
Yeah.
3 days later, after the ICU, they did some more testing. They said, okay, well, it seems that your heart's okay, but we heard about your story, and we need you to go see a therapist.
It was anxiety, huh?
Yeah. So I went to go see
Yeah.
a therapist. Of course, the first thing they
Mm.
do is they prescribe me Paxil,
Oh.
antidepressants. So I was on Paxil for about 3, 4 months. I was out of
Mhm.
work, curled like a baby in my bed, couldn't do life.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
finally went back to work, and still was on Paxil. And a buddy of mine asked me, "Hey, what have you been up to?" And I told him because he hadn't seen me in a long time. So he invited me to church. I went to church and with him, and I said, "Okay, that's fine. Whatever. I'm trying to get some peace in my life, right?" but I was still taking the antidepressants. So one day at church, probably about 4 months, 5 months into the Paxil stuff, I felt totally different at this one service. I just like, you know what? I don't need these pills no more. So I got home that day. I got all the Paxil. I watched it down the drain.
Oh.
Yeah, tell me what. So
Oh no.
I went to the therapist on that Tuesday. This was a Sunday.
Oh no.
I went to the therapist on Tuesday. He says, "Hey Jim, how you doing?" He goes, "I'm doing good, and I don't need you no more." He goes, "What do you mean you don't need me no more?" Because I threw all my antidepressants down the drain. He goes, "Jim, you can't do that." I go, "You know what? I can do that," and I did it. So, and I walked out of the office. So that Friday, remember the program 2020?
Yeah.
They were doing a whole episode about antidepressants, and one of them was on Paxil. How people,
Yes, and you have to wean off of
yes,
them.
that people were committing suicide because they would just get rid of their Paxil, and they would, and me, I threw it away. I haven't had a drink since my 38th birthday party.
Wait, and you didn't have any side effects from the withdrawals?
Nope.
That is crazy because Paxil, the side effects from because I was
Yes.
on Paxil too.
Yes.
And I weaned and it was still awful.
Yes.
Wow.
Nothing. And I haven't had a drink since that surprise party.
Mm-hmm.
And I just
Wow.
I just celebrate 24 years of my sobriety.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So like I said, my relationship with my biological father was we weren't close because he didn't really know how to act towards me because he never had any kids or never was married. I was, bang, you got a 38-year-old son.
You have an adult child, yeah.
And our relationship wasn't that close, but the family is really loving, very loving towards me.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good.
But they live far away, so I don't really see them that much. But me and my biological mother didn't get along.
Okay.
Most of it because the way she treated her foster kids and her thinking she knew everything about me, and just because she raised foster kids.
Right.
And I used to tell her all the time, "You have no clue what I feel inside. Remember, you gave me up.
Mm-hmm.
I went looking for you. You didn't look for me.
Right.
I went looking for you.
Right.
And you kept your other children, but you gave me up. And you don't know the day of my birth.
That's a lot to take in.
Yeah, you didn't know a day of my birth. You didn't know the time of my birth. You didn't even know where I was born. She didn't tell me any of that.
She said she didn't remember?
None of it.
You think she disassociated?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I never got no answers.
Yeah.
That's why I'll never know where I was for the first 6 months of my life.
Yeah.
I won't. I'll never know because she didn't remember nothing. And like I said, she passed away about 2 years ago. My adopted dad passed away 10 years ago. My adopted mother 23 years ago, and my biological mother 2 years ago.
Okay.
But so they're all passed away. I've been to all their funerals, buried all of them. But the only time I cried was at my adopted mom's. And I told you the reason why, because the molestation and plus my mom protecting me as a child. Like I said, it was a roller coaster. There's stuff that I found out maybe the last 2-3 months, that things that she used to tell me for 20 years I knew her, that it was all lies. There's a lot of stuff that she told me that I was equal to her other kids, and this last 2 years, I was a very patient man, and I found out that it was all lies. She lied to me for 20 years that I was equal to the rest of her kids.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm just gonna live my life. If I hate to be crude, but if I never see my siblings again, it won't bother me.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the things that's happened to me in the last few months is not very good. And you know what? It's sometimes I regret looking, but then sometimes, yeah, but sometimes it's good that I did because at least I didn't die not knowing. least I'm not
You
gonna
know
die.
what? Yeah, we all have to know the truth.
Yeah, we all have to know the
And
truth.
yeah,
And
it's
these are happening by me telling my story.
absolutely.
I'm helping men that were abused by sexual abuse
Hmm.
by males or even not a male. So men have come to me, other adoptees have come to me,
Hmm.
uh, parents that want to adopt people have come to
Hmm.
me because they hear my story, and it's all for a reason. My
Yep.
trauma is not going to go to waste. I always tell that to my wife.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our voices are the ones that are not allowed to be heard. And the
Exactly,
more of us that speak out about it, the more we're gonna eventually convince people to listen,
exactly.
you know. And also I wanted to mention that yeah, it's very common for adoptees to have a complicated relationship with both biological and adoptive families.
Yes,
And I think the big one is, and why we have attachment issues, is because we never had an opportunity to attach to our adoptive parents because we weren't theirs and there was
yes,
really no bond, especially 6 months. You were, it was 2 months for me, but I was already broken by the time I
yes.
came to them. I already didn't know how to attach. And then we also, with our biological families, we have no history with them. So we don't know them either.
Exactly. It's like I put this thing on my Facebook page one time. It says, you know what? Adoptees are born alone, and
Hmm.
sometimes we die alone.
Hmm.
And that's the way our life's going to be because you know what? To be honest with you, since I've been telling my story for the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years,
Hmm.
it my family that I was raised with, only one person has come to me to apologize and say he was sorry. I didn't know anything about what you went through
Yeah.
3 months ago. So for 7 years, none of my siblings I was raised with have ever come to me. I'm
Wow.
sorry what happened to
Yeah.
you. Who was it that molested you? Nothing. And
Yeah.
I'm all thinking, wow, not
Hmm.
one family member has ever came to
Hmm.
me. The only one is my sister Barbara because she's adopted too, and I think because we have that bond because we're both
Yes.
adoptees, right?
She gets it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she
Of
gets it.
course.
And when I asked her about a search, she won't go search because
Hmm.
I think it's because she got scared off with my story.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and my wife always says, "Well, babe, she's not ready. She's not
Hmm.
ready to do that."
Hmm.
And maybe her parents are already gone by now because she's a year older than me, so she's 63, 64, I think
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, there's a
So
good chance.
they're gone already. So, but
Mm.
I've lost family members because of telling my story.
Oh,
Because
me too. Yeah.
oh yeah, I mean, it's just like wow. And you know what? That's what life is all about, and it's okay.
Right. My husband always said, forget them. They were
Yes,
never yours. You were never theirs.
exactly.
It's not, it's of no significance. I just was recently contacted by an aunt because of a silly meme
Hmm.
about adoptees and about adoptees uh extended family. After your parents die, extended family like just throws you away because you were never theirs and they were never yours and there's no connection anymore because your parents are gone, so
Yes.
their job is done. And aunt attacked me about that, saying I was attacking my parents, my who
Mhm.
were no longer with us, when in fact I was attacking her.
Yes.
But
Yes.
but that's why nobody talks to me anymore. And you know
Yeah.
what, that's fine. That they it's no great loss. I mean, it's another trauma, but
Yes.
it's just, it is what it is.
You're
And
so used to it. You're so used to the roller coaster that it doesn't
yeah.
even. People say you're such a strong man, Jim. Goes, I am. And
Mm.
he goes, you don't see me when I'm in that deep, deep, dark dots
Oh, of
in my
course,
head.
because we're used to masking.
Exactly. I put that
That's what
facade
we
on all my
do.
life.
Uh-huh, me too.
Because
Yep.
everyone, Jim, you're always smiling. You're such a happy guy. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
what's inside
Yep.
this guy. But
Exactly.
they've been listening to my interview because this is probably my 20th one. And some of
Mm-hmm.
my friends, God, Jim, I didn't know your story. Because, I'm sorry that happened to you. He goes, it's okay. It's okay. I go, it's just life. Everybody has a story.
It's therapeutic to be able to
Yeah,
express yourself, and that's all we can do,
exactly.
because it's nobody's going to validate us but ourselves, and
Exactly.
speaking our truth is the most authentic thing we can do.
Mhm.
And I thank you for doing it, and I want more of us to do it, and
Yes, yes, yes.
to create a space for us to be heard. So
Yes, exactly.
Jim, thank you so much for
Well,
speaking
thank
to me
you.
today.
Thank
What a
you.
great conversation.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim Serrano. What a delightful gentleman Jim is.
Such a
Yes.
gem.
Hey, Lily Jackson, we are out of here. Would you like to plug anything or tell people how they can find you if you want them to find you, or anything else?
I can be found like outside your house. Whole time. All of my socials are like Lily Zella, Lilyzella. What can I plug? I have a Substack.
Oh, she has a
Um,
wonderful Substack, actually. What's that
yeah,
called?
it's like the account, I think, is Lily Zella Jackson. It's just
Yes. And it's
my
really beautiful. She wrote something really beautiful yesterday, you guys. So,
thanks,
you know,
Mom.
shameless plug from your mom. Okay, I am Julie Dixon Jackson. You can find all things Julie Dixon Jackson at cutoffjeans.com. I've made some changes to my website lately, and if you want to go over there and see what they are, feel free to do so. But I'm in a good place about it. That's all I have to say
Great.
about that. Go look for yourself.
Good.
Don't forget to, if you would like to help us with our overhead in our little podcast that could, feel free to join our Patreon. And
Yeah.
as always, the truth is in your jeans.
God, is it?